Well, hello there everyone, it's Sunday and time for a new episode of Record Collecting with a Quill. Today we're talking disappointing albums from a couple of perspectives, I guess. Some albums come out and are a big disappointment, and continue to be a disappointment forever, but some albums grow on you with time, and I have at least one example of that from the albums I picked out today. So before we start, you know the drill. Make sure you subscribe and click that little notice bell as well, and share with your friends. Well, starting out with disappointing albums, when you were younger and a kid, whenever you bought an album, you hardly had any money, so you tend, or at least I tended to buy albums from a safe perspective. I listened to them quite a lot before I bought them, just because you didn't have any money to spend on taking chances. But there's still some I remember quite vividly from my childhood that I was really disappointed hearing, and there's some albums that has been released in later years that's big disappointments as well. I've tried to stay positive in this series, but today we're gonna talk letdowns. Starting out, this one, Bruce Springsteen, Human Touch, came out in 1992, and around that time I was really into Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band and the whole vibe about him, and in the 70s, Darkness on the Edge of Town and Born to Run. And then this came out, and it was really a hyped record, both this one and its sister record, Lucky Town. And then the single got out, or word was that he had fired or put E Street Band on hold and recorded with studio musicians, which was true. You have here Jeff Porcaro from Toto on drums, among others. And this one, when it came out, I remember the single was released, I think midnight or something, you can listen to it. And it was really slick, and it was California Springsteen, and he moved to California around this time as well. It was no way near the whole New Jersey, the whole streets, the boardwalks, it was a totally different story. And it, as I say, didn't suit him at all. Listening to this today, there's still some great tracks on it, but it's no way near one of my favorite Bruce Springsteen albums, and I prefer Lucky Town. I think that's a little bit rougher and a little bit more in Springsteen style, but no way near his prime at all. Next one, we could take that one. ACDC, Ball Breaker. This is an album we had high expectations for. Rick Rubin producing. He had a strong track record around this time. He'd done Red Hot Chili Peppers. He had done a lot of great stuff, and also you had Phil Rudd coming back into the band, so expectations were really high when this one came out, but it fell flat for a couple of different reasons, I believe. I think number one, and I've read up on it afterwards, Rick Rubin and ACDC didn't hit it off at all, and they recorded for a long time. They didn't find any sounds they really like, and also I think the songs are not that great either. It's lacking strong tracks. It's good to have Phil Rudd back in the band. He's a much more important part of ACDC than I think many believe, but even him can't help rescuing this album, unfortunately. It's a shame, but hey, can't win them all. ACDC are usually have a strong track record for making great albums, but this one is not one of them. Next one, Aerosmith, Down with Mirrors, the first reunion album they did with Joe Perry and Brad Whitford, rejoining them. And this is another one where the tracks, there's not any good songs in my opinion, and I think the production is quite weak as well. It's dated. It was a big disappointment when it came out, and I don't think they were really clean at all when they did it as well. They shaped up for the record coming after, the Permanent Vacation album, which I really do enjoy, but this one was a total miss, and I think the producer as well, Ted Templeman, produced most of the Van Halen albums through the years, was a wrong choice for them here as well. I tried to listen to it just a few weeks ago, but I turned it off. I think this one is not good at all, really. Next one, well, them Crooked Vultures. Here you have a supergroup with Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. You have Dave Grohl from Nirvana and Foo Fighter, and you also have John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin. And talk about a supergroup. And I was really, this album was really hyped when it came out, and I think it's okay. It's a little bit self-indulgent, and it's also lacking good songs in the end. I got to see them live as well when they played here in Sweden, and it was, I mean, fantastic. At least to see John Paul Jones and Dave Grohl was great as well. The whole band was great, but as I said, they were lacking strong songs, and I think it was a little bit too much of Josh Homme's. I think it really feels that he has a lot of influence on this album. I should have listened to a little bit more of Dave Grohl's sense of melody, I believe. Anyway, it's still an album I can enjoy, but it was no way near as good as I hoped for before it was released. Next one. This may be surprising. The Black Crowes Amoric album. This is actually nowadays one of my favorite albums of all time. I love this album. But when it came out, it was a big disappointment. I was a super fan of the Southern Harmony album, and this one, it was something totally different, and it was really hard to get into at first. You didn't have the strong rock tracks like Remedy or Sting Me on this one. It was a little bit slower songs, it was more groovy, you had a lot of really great ballads, but when it came out, it was nothing what I expected. So I was actually quite disappointed when it came out at first, but quite soon it grew on me, and as I said, nowadays it's one of my absolute favorite albums, and it's arguably the best album in the Black Crowes discography. Great album, but it was a big disappointment because it was totally different from what I expected. And speaking of being totally different, this is what a midlife crisis looked like, if you ask me. The Metallica Sanct Anger album, and if you've seen the documentary from the recording of this album, you can see it's a band in total crisis, and they're trying to reinvent themselves, which I think in a way is really cool, just trying to do something different after playing together for 20 or 30 years plus. But this one sort of is missing guidance as well. They're trying too hard to be something they're not, and also sound-wise, it's really difficult to listen to this one. You can talk about the drum sound. It's an episode of its own, I guess. But also no guitar solos. And it's one of those albums, it's really hard to enjoy this one. You really have to sit down and have patience, I guess. But for me, it's a big letdown. Metallica Sanct Anger. And the last one, the biggest letdown of them all. You know me, I'm a Kiss fan. And this one, Psycho Circus, the much hyped reunion album with Gene and Paul and Ace and Peter together again after a successful reunion tour in 96-97. And then this one came, and you could hear immediately that's not Peter Criss playing, and you could also hear that's not a lot of Ace Frehley on this one as well. Stories differ why they're not part of it. Gene and Paul proclaims that the producer Bruce Fairbairn didn't want to work with Peter or Ace, and it's another stories that they wanted to renegotiate their contracts, and since they weren't under contract they couldn't record. But either way, this one is not anywhere near what it was supposed to be. As a Kiss fan, you imagine something like Rock and Roll Over or Love Gun, and you get this, I don't know, really weird album. And actually there's some demo versions or rough mixes, more is a better word, I think, that sounds a lot better. But they try, these are like Gene and Paul trying to be Kiss, but they're not, and they're trying to sort of I don't know, trying to recreate Destroyer, but without the key elements there. So also an album I hardly listen to. There's a couple of great tracks. I really love Dreaming, Paul's track. He was actually sued by the Alice Cooper camp for that one. It was a little too close to 18, but it's still a great track. Maybe a few others, but I had so high expectations for this one, and it came out really, really flat, unfortunately. That was my 7 picks. What are your disappointing albums? Please let me know in the comment section. And usually I put a couple of tracks in the Spotify playlist so you can like find some nuggets, and there's still some nuggets to be found on these albums, but maybe not all of them. But I put a couple of tracks on the Spotify playlist anyway, so you can listen to them. But I would love to hear your comments. What are your most disappointing albums or releases or letdown albums? Please let me know. And also make sure you subscribe to our social media. It's the QUILL Sweden. More news coming up, and more shows as well. So stay tuned for a lot more information and more episodes. We'll see what we talk about again next week. Well, that's it for now. Time to go enjoy some good albums before it's time to hit the bed and get up to work tomorrow. See you all again next week. Cheers. Bye for now.